This is Dave.
Well, hello, Dave. How are you?
Is this Claudia?
Yes, this is Claudia.
Awesome. So our technology is working reasonably well, isn't it?
Well, I believe so. If we've got Jacqui also on with us, then it worked like a charm.
Is she?
Hi, I'm here.
You're there. Jacqui's on the line with us. All right.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, Jacqui. And what's your last? Do you even want to say your last name or?
Sure, my name is Jacqueline Lopez.
Jacqueline Lopez. And what part of the country do you live?
I live in New York.
New York City.
I live in a suburb outside of New York City, but I was born and raised in New York City.
Wow. Well, I want you to know that my mother graduated from high school from White Plains, New York.
Okay, I know that. I work in Yonkers. I work in Westchester, so I know that area well.
Okay, and my grandmother and grandfather had, with 2 or 3 other partners, had a line of retail stores, and they lived near Mount Kisco, New York.
Okay, so Westchester family.
Yeah, so, but they've been gone for quite a while. My mother lives in, she lives in central Pennsylvania, but, so I do know the New York City area a little. Here in the studio with me is Jeff Brown. Jeff is a lawyer.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello there. And he has a lot of interesting stories. But you know what we have in common?
What's that?
And I know this is a bit off the subject, but it's, you know that have you heard of the World Series? I'm sure you have. I'm being a little bit of a smart ass.
Yes.
You know, the New York Mets are in that game, right?
Yes, I do know that.
And Jeff and I held our professional careers before radio in Kansas City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've been Royals fans for, well, probably ever since the team was started back in, about 1969, I think was the first year that Ewing Kauffman brought baseball back to Kansas City after a couple of years of absence and started the Kansas City Royals.
So are you a baseball fan?
I am. I like football a little more, but I'm happy anytime a New York team makes the playoffs, let alone the World Series.
That's a big deal. Because it's been...
Yeah, it is. Huge deal.
It's been a long time for the Metties, hasn't it? It's all the way back to, the mid-1970s or so.
Well, wasn't Strawberry on the team at the time?
I think it was in the 80s.
In the 80s? All right.
Because Darryl Strawberry was a big-time player. Well, I want you to know, I went to Shea Stadium at the time and watched Tom Seaver pitch.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
That was a long time ago.
So I'm getting up in the years.
Hall of Famer, Tom Seaver. Tom, terrific. I mean, to see him pitch. Yeah, no, I never saw it live, but yeah.
Live. My grandfather and I went to the ball game. We, from Mount Kisco is where their business was, so we went from there to wherever Shea Stadium is. And that's the same week that he took me up into the World Trade Center towers. And, of course, the Statue of Liberty. And so, that's a pretty profound time because not too many people were able to go up inside of the World Trade Towers. I mean, they're amazing structures. So tell us about you and your family and how you're tied into the 9/11 event there.
My husband was a lieutenant in the NYPD for 27 years, and he recently passed away 4 months ago from a 9/11 illness. He died of lung failure after a 3-year battle. So that's basically how I got tied in with the support group and with Claudia, is through my husband's death.
My goodness. Well, our condolences and sorry for what you and your family and of course your husband has gone through. This is pretty profound. So take us through what your husband did to help people, and then after that, then as he learned that he wasn't he was a sick man. Can you just help us go through that scenario?
Sure, I'll try to be as brief and concise, but my husband, as I said, worked for 27 years, so every day of his life he was doing something to help New York City and the community. And the day of 9/11, he went down there as a volunteer just to do whatever he could, and for about 8 weeks after that, so all the way through November, he was down there every day. He did about 12 to 14-hour shifts. His job was to secure the pile, so he was standing on the pile. He was not doing any digging. His job was, with his friends, to secure the pile, to keep everyone away from it so the other first responders could do their job, with whatever the rescue and recovery efforts they were doing. And he never really thought too much of it afterwards. He never really spoke much about it. And we began dating in 2004, so we were together for almost 11 years. And he was perfectly healthy. He lived a wonderful, vibrant life. He could run 3 miles a day. And then all of a sudden, in 2012, he came down with what we know as the 9/11 cough. And we didn't know it at the time, but we thought he had pneumonia. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't lay flat. We went to 4 different hospitals, and they couldn't really get a grasp of what was going on with his lungs. And finally, at one city hospital, after being there for 6 weeks, and he had a lung biopsy, he was diagnosed with a very rare lung disease that is only linked to environmental toxins. My husband was never a smoker. He never drank. He was perfectly healthy. And unfortunately, from all the months that his lungs were not functioning well, it also put a strain on his heart and caused his heart to fail. And then we embarked on an 8-month hospital stay where my husband was in intensive care for 125 days, fighting for his life. He spent all of that in a coma. He had a trach in his throat, and he was connected to a respirator. And after those 8 months, he lost his ability to walk, and he spent the last 3 years of his life, from 2012 until 2015, in a wheelchair. And he was on oxygen for the rest of his life. He couldn't breathe on his own, and he was on another form of life support for his heart. And he suffered greatly, and in the end, I had to take him off of life support and let him go.
Well,
that's a short summary.
okay, that's pretty severe information right there. We're trying to let this stuff kind of adjust in our minds here for a little bit, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, thank you. It really is. The suffering that he went through every day, spent in the last 3 years, spent over 16 months of his life in a hospital, and all he wanted to do was live. He died at the age of 50, and he would lay in bed every day. He was bedbound the last 6 months of his life, and all he wanted to do was be able to breathe, and all he wanted to do was be able to walk, and he couldn't do any of those things. He couldn't care for himself at all for the last 3 years. He needed complete care with all daily functioning.
Wow. So what I'm visualizing, what your husband did, number one, he felt the need to volunteer and to help. Okay, there's kindness in that man's heart.
Absolutely.
What was his first name?
His name was Louis Lopez.
Okay, so Louis had the kindness in his heart, and he wanted to help. So he got assigned a responsibility, to watch over the debris pile, which, in that debris pile are going to be human beings.
Yes.
There's going to be personal items. There's going to be a lot of toxic dust. And here he is. He's responsible for that, working long days, day after day, for a long period of time. And at the time, thought nothing about it.
He thought absolutely nothing about it. The only thing he said to me once was he remembered the little paper masks that they gave out and how it really wouldn't stop any of the dust. And he remembered on his lunch break or dinner break trying to find a local pizza place or deli, and all the stores around there were just filled with that toxic, thick air that Claudia was speaking about last week. And no matter where you went, you couldn't get a break from the dust that was in the air. And he would be covered from head to toe every day in that debris and that dust.
Wow. And when you're talking about a dust that has been, burned, I mean, it's a dust as fine as dust as you can possibly think of. And in there, you're going to have contaminants such as
jet fuel,
and asbestos.
Yes.
So which one is worse, Jeff? The jet fuel? I mean, jet fuel once it's burned, but you're saying that
you're talking to a guy who went through Navy boot camp and firefighting day, and I was breathing the black smoke of burning jet fuel, and when you talk about a micro dust, you're talking about carbon. So I don't know. I guess asbestos can be pretty damaging to you, but this sounds like it acted a little too quickly.
Well, there was actually over 100 different toxins in that
It's
that we were to. So the asbestos is certainly one that's going to really start haunting us here soon. But the concrete dust, everything was pulverized. And so a very fine particulate that not only did we inhale, but that we also absorbed through our skin. It certainly was on the food when we were down there eating. So we digested it. It came into our systems through a variety of sources.
Transdermal and through the lungs, yes.
Okay, I didn't hear that last part there, Claudia, I'm sorry.
It's just that we breathed it in, we digested it in, we absorbed it through our skin. It was a constant exposure to this toxic chemical mix, and that includes, if you think about these buildings, and we're just talking the two main towers, they were 110 stories tall each. This is a 16-acre square site, and you have two buildings that come down into fine dust, and now you're talking about all the possible particulates, the office furniture, which is made, certainly Jeff would understand this too if he's got a firefighting background with the Navy. The particulates that are within like a veneer on a desk, or the woods. Nothing's really made anymore, just simple wood. And that in and of itself, it's not healthy for you, but now you add all of the other products that are fused to these materials that are just in a basic office building. Now we've got 210-story buildings that came down, pulverized, and we're breathing that in.
And all you were given were those little paper masks that quite obviously were not adequate for filtering this type of micron range particles or even smaller.
Too many of the responders down there worked without any type of protection. We had been told at the time that the air was safe, which turned out later to be untrue. And I'm not going to go into all of that, but the air was unsafe. That's been proven. And we were exposed to it on a daily basis. For people like Lewis, who were down there 12 to 14 hours a day, you didn't have to be digging in that dust to be covered with it, to have that complete and total exposure. And like Jacqui mentioned, you go to a place just to try to find some place to eat. And we had a couple of places on site, and they were covered with the dust. It didn't matter how much you tried to keep those places clean, and you could taste it. You could taste it in the food. You could just taste it in the air as you were walking around. And paper masks were probably the worst thing. There was really no protection at all. Some were given respirators, but the respirators would clog within an hour. And so then you found yourself taking them off, and you were working without because we had a mission and we had a job to do because that's who we are.
See, that's the part that that people really need to hear about, is that, I have a little bit of exposure of, in the manufacturing business. You have weld dust, and I know what we went through to keep our guys safe for welding. But that's smoke, and smoke is a contaminant without a doubt. But when you have the material right there in the dust, which is it's material. It's you can pick it up and hold it, and it flies through the air. So it's the absolute worst situation that you can be in. But then, Louis and yourself, Claudia, you felt the need to participate and help people and find their loved ones if they could be found. And there's got to be just tons of stories about that, the positive things of the effort, and what happened. It's never positive when someone perishes, but after you come to the realization of that going on, or happened, but you want to have something that says the loved one is there. That now we've got some years later, let's see, 2001 to right now, that's 14 years plus, and Louis was a healthy man, and it was proven that the contaminants, the type of illness that Louis had, was from contaminants on that site. And from what you've communicated with us, Claudia, there's Louis, but there's many, many others that have
Thousands, tens of thousands.
That have experienced it.
Tens of thousands of people are sick right now, and close to 5,000 have cancers. That's just the cancers. We're not even talking about all the other issues and common health problems like the COPD, emphysema, the asthmas, the other lung diseases. There's more studies going on right now about neurological type illnesses that people are having, numbness in the hands and feet, and just devastating effects on people's lives. But now I'll hit on something you mentioned a little bit ago. From all evil, some good comes. And if there's a good that comes from this, it's having listening ears. It's bringing people together, like having Jacqui in my life. What a blessing that is. This woman has been through hell. And she's not unlike so many of the other widows. 1,800 plus have died since 9/11. They're still dying. They're still being murdered, like I talked about last week. And this lady has been through hell. And she stood by her man for those 3 years where he was an invalid. And she took care of him, and she loved him as any good wife, any good spouse would do. And I can't thank God enough for having people like Jacqui that have entered into my life. So from this evil, there is good that comes. It's just a matter of understanding it and recognizing it when it does.
And is amen for that, Jacqui? What do you have to say? What do you want to say to wake people up? What you said should certainly wake all of us up with your story. And I think what Claudia mentioned, by basically you were a continuous caretaker for your husband, and I can't imagine what that was like. But many others are going through this now, and will continue to go through it. What help? What is the solution for being in such a negative position, such as what you went through? What would have helped you to make what your husband and what you went through yourself? And I'm assuming that you have some children. Is that right?
We never had a chance to have children together. He got sick a year after we got married, but he had a son from a previous marriage who just turned 21.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So he got sick shortly after you got married.
Yeah. We've been together for 10 years, and we got married in 2010, and he got sick about a year and a half later.
Wow. Okay, so I don't know if my question is fair. If you don't want to answer it, I totally understand. But if you can communicate to our listeners, and maybe there's someone out there that is listening where they can shake the cages and wake up our politicians in Washington, D.C. and say, you need to listen to these people, and what do you want to say to them that would help you, it would have helped your husband for the very negative situation that you're involved in?
I can't go backwards to 2001, and as Claudia said, I don't want to talk too much about it, but I wish that the government would have been more forthright and more forthcoming with the toxins that were in the air, and I wish the right thing would have been done for all the first responders and other rescue workers. So I can't get into going backwards. It wasn't done, and I have to live with the fact that Lewis's life was cut short, as well as 1,800 other people. What I would like your listeners to know is, A, 9/11, as Claudia said last week, did not end in 2001. It's continuing, and it's going to continue. The effects are going to last for years and years and years. We are losing people almost every day, and I don't think people, especially outside of New York, really understand this. I want people to know that there were many men and women, just like my husband Lewis, who were trying to do the right thing, what they thought their jobs were, and they tried to put it past them and go on with their lives. And they were suddenly stricken 10, 12 years later with horrible illnesses. And every single day for 3 years, my husband fought for his life. All he wanted to do was see his son graduate from college this May, and that was taken from him. He spent 3 years in a wheelchair, gasping for air every day, asking himself, why did this happen? Why did I even go down there? Sometimes, just being honest, he would ask himself that. And why wasn't I protected? He didn't feel protected. And until the day he died, all he wanted to do was live. And it got to a point where the pain and suffering was so bad that he asked me to please let him go. And I had to take him off a ventilator, and with his son and the rest of our family, we had to watch him take his last breath. And I'm left now without the love of my life. I'm left without my husband. His son Anthony is left without his father. And Lewis was just taken way too soon. I want people to understand that 9/11 is just more than just asthma or a cough. For some people, these cancers and these illnesses completely debilitate them.
Well,
You know, and Lewis passed at age 50, and that is about the average age that we're seeing of those passing away. We've had people as young as 37, 38 who have just died last year or two. So they're dying in their 30s, their 40s, and their 50s. And 50 is like an average age. And this is a shame. You know, we lose people in our lives every day. You know, this is part of life. It's part of what we go through. But this was through no fault of anyone's. They went down and they did the right thing. We went down and we did the right thing. And we feel forgotten. You know, when we see the politicians going out there and they go to all these 9/11 memorials, and they say all of these grandiose things, oh, we'll never forget. It's about honor, let's honor our heroes. Well, where are some of those folks now? Where are they now speaking out for us? Now, we have much better support this go around than what we did 5-6 years ago when we first got the joke passed. It's much better now, but it's not enough. I'd like to see every single member in Congress, every single senator step up to the plate and say, you know what, 9/11 didn't end on 9/11, and we are going to take care of those people that did the right thing by doing the right thing. You know, today, I was listening to Mr. Johnson. What a wonderful, loving, inspirational man he is. And when he was talking about Kentucky, that brought an awful lot of things to mind. Because right now, we have the votes. By all measures, we do have the votes. But what we need is for Mitch McConnell, the senator from Kentucky, and the Senate Majority Leader to bring it to the floor. He's the only one who can do that. And so I would urge the callers here today to call Mitch McConnell's offices in Kentucky as well as in D.C. and say, bring this to a vote. You know, Mr. Reagan, President Reagan, yelled out and people listened, tear down that wall. Tear down that wall. We need a wall torn down too. We need the wall of politics torn down. And to move this forward to a vote, to put the minds and hearts at ease, because our health care is already run out. And if we don't get this passed, and I mean soon, by January, we're all going to start getting letters that we no longer have health care, that we're going to have to start finding our own physicians, our own doctors, and paying out of pocket, of which, and I hit on this last week, many people simply can't afford to do. It's going to be your mortgage payment or your cancer medication. What's it going to be? So I would urge the people of Kentucky, and I speak in Kentucky, that beautiful, beautiful state with a great and deep love, and I'll tell you why. My dad was from Kentucky. Him and three of his brothers all fought in World War II. They're all part of the greatest generation. All four of those members are now gone and gone to heaven. They have two other very much younger brothers, including my Uncle John, who's a Vietnam War veteran. And he still lives in Kentucky. I still have many kinfolk in Kentucky. I've been there many times. The Kentucky people are beautiful, down-to-earth, grassroots. They're bluer than the blue grass that the state is known for. They have wonderful, wonderful hearts, and we need them. Because a lot of these representatives in Kentucky are not going to just listen to outsiders. They don't understand that this also was a Kentucky event. This wasn't just in New York or Pennsylvania or Washington, D.C. event. This affected the entire nation. Matter of fact, in just the last few weeks, I post memorials. I retain a role of honor and remembrance for anyone who served at the sites, any one of the three sites, and who have died since. And just the last week, I posted one for a gentleman of Kentucky who went with the DMORT team. DMORT is the Disaster Mortuary Operational Response Team, known as DMORT. And there's usually coroners that go out on these teams, and they're identifying remains. They're helping in the mortuaries there at the site. And Mr. Terry Dabney just passed away. He's only age 63 now. I don't know what Mr. Dabney passed of, but he was a responder and a man dedicated to his profession and to his faith, and he went and did the right thing. And I somehow would think that Mr. Dabney would certainly be with us and understand the need to pass the JOPA. So we had a Kentuckian, and he's not the only Kentuckian that was there. We had many others. We had them from Texas, we had them from Kentucky, from Florida, from California, Montana, Washington. Every single state in this country had responders that were exposed to these toxins. And doing the right thing is passing the JOPA. So I would ask people like this beautiful Mr. Johnson and the other listeners, especially those that are in Kentucky and those that aren't from Kentucky, call Mitch McConnell's office. Tell him to get it out to the floor for a vote. Call those Kentucky representatives, none of which, except for one, has signed on as a co-sponsor yet. I don't understand that. I simply don't understand that. You've got these beautiful people in Kentucky that are faith-based, that are always about, you know, we want to do the right thing, and Mr. Johnson was talking just earlier about reaching out and doing the right thing for people at Christmas. We got homeless people and vets, and well, we're vets too.
You bet.
And this simple piece of legislation can make all the difference and give us peace of mind. And we need Mitch McConnell to bring it to the floor for a vote.
And the Senate bill
and we need to set a representative to sign on.
The Senate bill is S928. The House bill is 1786.
Yeah, HR 1786, yes.
And Mitch McConnell's phone numbers, ladies and gentlemen, in Washington, D.C. is 202-224-2541. Mitch McConnell's phone number in Washington, D.C. is 202-224-2541. I did post that on Reagan Radio Network's Facebook page which is under the 9/11 Rescue Workers and Friends post, where we announced that Claudia and Jacqui were going to be on our show today. But, you know, this is serious stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, Claudia, you and Jacqui have been dealing with this for a long, long time. But the funds are about to run out, and there's huge numbers here that are involved that's going to be hurt, that's going to be they're already living a very difficult life with the illness. And it's the person that has the illness plus their families that are dealing with this. And friends.
So much. You know, and I'll be happy to post all the Kentucky phone numbers too. Anybody who comes through our website also, there's a contact page there. I read every single email. If they have questions, they want contact numbers, I'm more than happy to personally address those there. Just use our contact page on our website. Yeah, we need these folks to step up to the plate. We need the people in the Congress. You know, we have the numbers, but we need that committee over in Congress to also pass this, and we still have only 3 of 8 that are on the committee that are looking at this right now. We need a majority for them to move it out to the floor.
What is the committee
called? So we have a lot of... Pardon?
What is the committee called?
If you'll give me just a second, I'll pull that up because these committee names are very long. Bear with me just 1 second.
While Claudia is looking that up, I just wanted to give one example of why it's so important for this bill to be passed. My husband, when he got sick, had over 22 medications per day that he needed to take in order to survive. And if we didn't have the help of the Zadroga bill and all the medical assistance, we would be paying a few $100s a month in co-pays, even if we had regular insurance, just for his medication. And in 3 months in intensive care, before my husband was certified with the 9/11 disease, with 2 health insurances, we still owed $36,000 in co-pays.
$36,000 now. Who can manage that?
With 2 health insurances. He worked and I worked.
And that committee is the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Constitution and Civil Justice. The members that we're missing right now that have not signed on yet are Trent Franks. He's from Arizona. These are all Republicans. Trent Franks out of Arizona. Ron DeSantis out of Florida. Louis Gohmert out of Texas. Come on, Louis. We know that you want to be with us. Just sign on. We want you. Jim Jordan out of Ohio. And Steve King out of Iowa. You know, these are grassroots folks that should be on board. And with only 3 out of 8, we need a majority so it doesn't get killed in their committee. Let's do it. You have the listening audience and the heart out there that can make this happen for us.
Can you send that to me, and we'll put some oomph behind that? Because we have several people in Texas that are pretty well in the know that we should be able to have an influence with, and I think they know Louis personally. Trent Franks.
That would be true.
You know, it takes one person to push the rest of them along. That is what you need, we discuss at length with some of these politicians, you know, and their tendencies. I mean, they, unfortunately, some of them, not all, some, they just want to look good and get reelected, and it's just the actual work, like what needs to be done right here. They just need to get it done. So,
we can't thank you enough. What you and Jeff and this program is doing for the 9/11 family, and we call ourselves family, and that includes the responders, the survivors, and the literal family members like Jacqui here. We are a family, and we just can't thank you enough from all of us.
Well, that's
and we're very diverse. We're not all conservatives, but we're very diverse. But we all thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, the care and love for people is care and love for people, and for those that step up and help many others, no questions asked. To me, that's like our military. This is a military mission.
It is. These men and women are casualties of this war.
Yeah. And
That's the truth of it.
Yeah.
I think that my daddy and his 3 brothers, they all served over in Europe and the Pacific. My dad was in the Navy, which I think Jeff will appreciate. He was a diver. So he did those deep water salvage missions over the Pacific, off of Burma and other areas. And then his other brother, Earl, was a Army Air Corps, because we didn't have Air Force back then. He was Army Air Corps. And, on one of his missions, on March the 8th, 1944, his was the only bomber to return from a mission out of 25. His was the only one that came back. So a remarkable person. And then there's my Uncle Elmer, and then my Uncle Truman, and I want to give a special mention to Truman. Truman was just a boy, like so many of us that go into things like 9/11 or go overseas to fight for our country and for all that matters to us. Truman was only 21, 22 years old, and he was part of the Big Red One. And the 1st Infantry stormed the beaches of Normandy and Omaha Beach, went on to liberate France, and they got up to Aachen, Germany, and while out on a reconnaissance mission, was killed on September 30th, 1944, serving his country. These are my Kentucky ancestors. And I can go on and on and on, because I got many people out there that are cousins now, and then you got my Uncle John, who served in Vietnam. So we are a proud military family. Very proud. And the one thing I remember most, my dad said to me before he died, was how proud he was.
you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
my dad served on submarines in the Atlantic during World War II, and of course he accomplished a tremendous amount during his life, but on his grave it says YN3. His duty in World War II on a submarine, and his battle station was the forward bow planes. That was the proudest accomplishment of his life.
Well, this is pretty heavy stuff, and to me, what the solution here is getting to the politicians and getting for the right person to hear and to act upon. And I'm sure every single one of them are aware of the importance of taking care of the people that have stepped up to care for those in a very meaningful way. And now we gotta push it over the top. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to have this content week after week, because out of sight, out of mind. And it brings people to the forefront that have experienced some really ugly things in their lives, but they dealt with it, such as what Claudia's doing, and obviously Jacqui and what she has done for her husband and for her husband's family. Pretty amazing. And then associated with that, there are many other grieving moments with other people that have been part of the 9/11 rescue. Is that, yeah, that's what you call it. I mean, that's what you have on your website. It is
started out, we were rescue and recovery workers, then the word eventually morphed into responder to incorporate everybody that was down there serving the site.